You do not want to devalue the quality, which has at times been the case if you send, say, JDT under 21s and to play, while they will still be very competitive and strong against the Singapore League clubs. You will wonder how those few Singapore football fans will really think when this happens. When the Singapore Cup group draw was announced for the 2024-25 edition, for the first time since 2017, there is an overseas guest club that complement the 9-team Singapore Premier League team sides that are going to be involved in the group stage of this competition, which will commence in February this year. That guest team is none other than Thai powerhouses BG Pathum United. They last competed in this competition as Bangkok Glass in 2010, when they became the first and only overseas guest team to lift the trophy after they defeated Tampines Rovers 1-0. And to date, the Glass Rabbits have actually the best record among all the overseas teams that have been involved in this competition in the past 2 decades, since the first overseas guest team was invited into the Singapore Domestic Cup competition in 2004. So Tanya takes a look at why overseas teams had been involved in the Singapore Cup competition in the past, and also why it is not easy for these overseas based teams to actually take part in such competitions that are outside of their domestic calendars. So if we look at the history of the Singapore Cup, which was actually established in 2008 as a substitute for the then Singapore FA Cup, which has since become an amateur or semi-professional cup competition for the teams playing in the Singapore Football League, formerly known as the National Football League and below. So the Singapore Cup is now the premier domestic cup competition in the country, and from 2018 until 2023, only the clubs who were involved in the top flight Singapore Premier League took part in this competition, with Young Lions being the occasional absentee. But nonetheless, having BG Pathum back to complete the 10-team lineup for the group stage, it was the first time since 2017 that an overseas guest team was involved in the competition, and also the first Thai club since I think since 2011, when Pattaya United were the last Thai club to be involved in the competition back in that year. So let's talk a little bit about the incoming guest team for the Singapore Cup, BG Pathum United. When it comes to BG Pathum United, they come with a storied history of their own in the Thai domestic football scene. And back then, they first took part in the Singapore Cup in 2009 as a guest club, and they actually reached the final where they lost 0-1 to Geylang United, now known as Geylang International, through the match winner by the late Hafiz Rahim. So then in the next year, in 2010, the Glass Rabbits went one better. They actually won the Singapore Cup competition outright after they defeated Tampines Rovers 1-0 at Jalan Besar Stadium again, with the winner coming from, so the match winner came through an unfortunate own goal from Benoit Croissant, if the records show to be accurate. Yeah, in that final, and that was also the last time the Glass Rabbits were involved in the competition. And to be fair to Bangkok Glass and many of the other guest teams that have been involved in the Singapore Cup between 2004 to 2017, the majority of them have used the Singapore Cup competition as a launching platform for them to establish themselves as you can say domestic powerhouses, being champions in their domestic leagues, and also to perform, to excel in the Asian club competitions, whether it was in the AFC Cup or the AFC or Asian Champions League. The Singapore Cup provided the first international opportunity for many of these overseas guest clubs to test themselves against, you can say, predominantly Singaporean-based teams in this competition. And actually, to put it in context, for overseas teams to be invited to play in this competition, they had to come through a few routes. I mean, because in that period also, from 2005 until 2019, the Malaysian Banking Services RHB Sedang Berhad, they had a Singapore branch here, and they were involved in the sponsorship of the domestic competition to expand their outreach into Southeast Asia. And I think with the invitation of those guest teams, which incidentally came under the stewardship of the then General Secretary Winston Lee Boon Aung, who is now the Secretary General of the ASEAN Football Federation, to enhance, to liven up the, you can say, to liven up the domestic cup competition, because Singapore is a rather small place where football is concerned. And I think, imagine when you keep seeing the same teams, at least sometimes depending on how the league is structured, 4 times or even 5 times in a single year if you meet again in the cup competition. And having a foreign club actually enhances the flavor, and also actually does bring in the occasional crowd, the compatriots, whether it's from Myanmar, from Thailand, to come forward to watch their compatriots in action before the Asian club competition comes to the fore. And actually, if I want to do it, let me have a quick recap of how the overseas teams became involved in the Singapore Cup competition. The first overseas guest team that was invited to this competition was Bruneian club Duli Penggiran Muda Mahkota FC, or DPM, or better known as DPMM FC, who were then competing in the Malaysian League in 2004. So they later on became a Singapore League team in 2009. Then from 2013 to 2020, when the pandemic struck, and they have since returned from 2023 since to the present. So they were the first guest team to be involved in 2004, and actually after establishing themselves as a league team in this republic. So they have actually, their best finish was actually a runners-up in the 2018 final, where they lost to Albrechts Niigata Singapore, another overseas club based in Singapore, until they became localized this season. So, but DPMM have went through a number of seasons in the Singapore League and in the Singapore Cup in particular. So from there, you can say the overseas guest teams expanded to initially Indonesia, who sent their Indonesia under 23s in 2005, where they reached the quarterfinals, only to be eliminated by Singapore Armed Forces. And later on, Pelita Jaya, who was then coached by Fandi Ahmad and assisted by Kadeyaya, they took part in the 2009 edition, where they lost 1-0 to DPMM in the opening round. Then came the Thais. The first Thai team to take part in the Singapore Cup was back in 2005, when the Thai Provincial Electrical Authority, who are now known as Buriram United after Nguyen Chichok took over the club and relocated it to the Buriram province. They were the first Thai team to be involved in the competition, and they reached the first round on both occasions in 2005 and 2006. They were followed by Chonburi, who actually reached the final in their first appearance in the competition in 2006, only to lose 2-3 to Tampines Rovers in after extra time in a dramatic final at the Old National Stadium in that year, but subsequently were eliminated in the first round in 2007. Then you also had Bangkok University, who are now known as Bangkok United. They also took part twice, and they finished third in 2007 and reached the quarterfinals in the next year. Then you had Tobacco Monopoly, which later became TTM Samusakon, but were subsequently disbanded after they were last known as Custom United in the mid 2010s. They actually took part also twice. Yes, every Thai club appears to have taken part in this competition at most twice, with the exception of Pattaya United, who took part in 2011 and were knocked out at the first hurdle. So Tobacco Monopoly, they reached the quarterfinals in 2008 and finished third in 2009. Then what about the Malaysians? Curiously, they were actually represented by only the Malaysia under-23s and later I think at club level better known as Harimau Muda. So in all the involvement in the competition, whether it was as a guest team in 2006 and 2011 and later on as a league team, thanks to the memorandum of understanding between Singapore and Malaysia Football Associations in that latter year, they actually took part as a league side between 2012 to 2014. Unfortunately, in all 5 occasions, they were eliminated at the first hurdle, with their most impressive result coming in actually what was rather a heroic 3-5 loss to Balestier in 2006. That's when they had the likes of Aidil Zafwan, Safi Salih, and those emerging rising stars who will later form the core of the team to become the ASEAN Championship winners in 2010. Then after the Malaysians, Thais and Indonesians, who were the early pioneers, then subsequently you had clubs from Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos, and the Philippines. They were all involved in the Singapore Cup with Phnom Penh Crown, who actually initially first competed as Khmer Empire and later known as Phnom Penh Empire. They actually made the most appearances among the overseas clubs in the competition as a guest team. They competed between 2006 consecutively to 2011 and returned in 2019. Their best finish was actually in 2009, where they stunned Young Lions 2-0 to advance to the next round, where they eventually lost 4-5 on aggregate to Bangkok Glass, yes, the current BG Pathum, in 2009 up 4-5 on aggregate. Apart from them, they also had Bongket, who took part in 2013, finished in the first hurdle, but reached the quarterfinals in 2017, followed by Naga Corp, or later known as Naga World, again, but they reached the first round in 2014 and 2016 and reached the quarterfinals in 2017. Sering, one of the clubs that are currently involved in the ASEAN Club Championship, also known as the Shopee Cup. They actually reached the first round in 2014 and 2015. Then you got Myanmar, 2 clubs, Okta United, who are now known as Hantawadi United. They reached the quarterfinals in 2011. The next year saw Kambauza, who were then coached by former Singapore national coach PN Sivaji. They actually also reached the quarterfinals in 2012 after they defeated Woodlands Wellington 2-0, 2-1, in the first hurdle. That was followed by Laos. Lao Police, they reached all the Laos teams, whether it's Lao Police, SHB Champasak, or the now defunct Yota, they all exited the first hurdle between 2012 and 2015. And Philippines, You had Loyola Morocco Sparks, Global FC, and later Global Cebu, then also Ceres, who later became known as Ceres Negros. I mean, all three, only Global are still thriving in the Philippines domestic game today, but the other three, for Loyola Morocco Sparks, they finished 4th in 2012. And Global FC also followed suit. They also finished 4th twice in 2013 and 2015, while Ceres finished 3rd in 2016. And the other guest clubs who came from outside Southeast Asia, they were South Melbourne from Australia. They're not an A-League club, they are more of a regional league side. They actually took part in 2010 and 2011, where their best finish was a quarterfinal place in their first year in the competition, followed by Hong Kong side Kitchi, whose only appearance in the Singapore Cup came in 2010, where they reached the quarterfinals before they were eliminated by French side Etoile FC, who were then playing in the Singapore League for only 2 years in 2010. So yeah, among most of the Southeast Asian nations they are covered, whether it's your under 23 side or club, but only Vietnam have never been involved in the Singapore Cup, and they are not going to do so in the future, because to compete in the Singapore Cup you need permission from their FAs to take part. And this time, why BG Batam United are allowed to take part in the Singapore Cup is partly down to that memorandum of understanding between Football Association of Singapore and BG Batam, which was signed last year. And I think as part of it, their youth sides have been competing in the Lion City Cup, and now they're going to take part in the Singapore Cup. And I think partially because of the interpersonal friendships between the Singapore football legend Fandi Ahmad and Jay Surachai, who is an influential member in the backroom staff as technical director. Yeah. So sometimes you can say personal friendships or networking does play a part in having an overseas club to come in this time, in this occasion, and definitely with the blessings from the Thai FA to do so, because it's really not easy. And if you're wondering why no Malaysian club has ever competed in the Singapore Cup apart from your Malaysia Under 23, later known as Harimau Muda, I think it's also quite simple. I think the Malaysians do not want their domestic calendar to be disrupted by non-AFC sanctioned competitions or non-AFF sanctioned competitions, in the case of the ongoing ASEAN Club Championship, which is known as the Shopee Cup, or for Johor Darul Taksim, who are now competing in the AFC Champions League Elites. Yes, JDT also have signed a memorandum of understanding with the Football Association of Singapore, but it's not as straightforward as just dispatching a team there, because you do not want to devalue the quality, which has at times been the case if you send, say, JDT under 21s and to play, while they will still be very competitive and strong against the Singapore League clubs. You will wonder how those few Singapore football fans will really think when this happens. And I think for the Singapore Cup, it is actually better to have foreign teams to entice the quality to liven up, especially when you have fresh foreign opposition, especially for local clubs who seldom qualify for Asian club competitions. This is usually their one and only opportunity for them to face against overseas based team in a competitive setting outside of their pre-season friendly games. So I think for PG Batam to return since they won the trophy in 2010, it was a welcome addition, and actually you can say I look forward to how PG Batam perform in the upcoming Singapore Cup when the group stage kicks off in February 2025.